talking about this, but this weekend you're not going to want to miss the Ring of Fire or the annular solar eclipse happening. That's going to be happening tomorrow. This rare phenomenon when the moon covers the sun to create the majestic Ring of Fire. And I know you've heard our weather team say that. Won't be seen a lot here in the U.S. And Josh, you actually do have an update for us on what we'll be able to see here in NWA. So Josh is here to share a little bit more on that. Plus, the weather team's got something really exciting to share.
Oh, yes, a very exciting little clip from Dan Scoff coming up in just a few moments. But guys, I mean, we've been talking about this over the last several weeks, right? The annular solar eclipse coming up tomorrow. Now, here in northwest Arkansas in the River Valley, I'm going to go ahead and give you your forecast. We alluded to that just a moment ago.
Yeah.
It's going to be quite cloudy across our areas. So you're going to want to go a little bit farther south, maybe well south of Interstate 40, in order to actually be able to view that. Also, I want to temper expectations just a little bit for this in our area, because we're going to have about 65 to 68% coverage when it comes to the sun and moon, which sounds like a lot, right? But when it comes to these Ring of Fire eclipses, typically the sun is so bright that it does kind of overshadow the moon a little bit. So you're going to want to have special equipment. You're going to want to have those glasses. You're going to have that filter on your camera, because it's going to be a little bit more difficult to see in our particular area. But next year, that's going to be a different story, because it's going to be totality, it's going to be completely dark, and it's going to be awesome.
Okay, so you talked about eyewear.
Yes.
What do we need to know there, Josh?
Yes, so you're going to want to get the eyewear that's approved from NASA, right? So they're going to know what's up. You can look stuff up online, right? It's a little bit too late to order things on Amazon, right? But these glasses, they're kind of flimsy. They look a little flimsy. They're about $3 online. But they're going to give you the protection you need, because they have a special filter on them in order to block out the sunlight, the direct rays from the sunlight. Again, be very careful with those glasses as well, because I just talked about how flimsy they are. If you have one little hole in that glass, it's going to break it, and the sun's going to break through and obstruct your eyesight a little bit. So just make sure you're being careful with that stuff. But most of the time, you can find those on Amazon or at Walmart for $2 or $3.
So even with the cloud cover, still need those glasses?
Absolutely, absolutely. Very, very powerful the sun is. And I mean, you talk about it all the time. You know, when you go to like a ski slope, you have to wear sunglasses too, because it's a little bit brighter when it comes to that very similar situation.
Yes, I feel like maybe those are some problems I'm having now as an adult, because I was staring into the sun as a kid.
Stop.
Yes, exactly. And you know, like next year, I want to just say this with the total solar eclipse real quick, right? Be very careful before totality, because it's the same situation, right? You're going to want to, your brain gets fooled a little bit by the sun. Just make sure you're staying aware, be careful, and have fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, the weather team put together a great video explaining the eclipse, so we're going to check it out right now.
Let's do it.
On October 14, 2023, a narrow portion of the United States is going to experience what's known as an annular eclipse. You might have heard it called the Ring of Fire. And we aren't going to see the Ring of Fire in northwest Arkansas or the River Valley, but I'll give you an illustration on why an eclipse occurs. Just wanted to let you know exactly what causes an annular eclipse. So you have to have the sun, you have to have the earth, and of course, in between the two, we've got the moon. And this is when an eclipse occurs, when the moon is in between the sun and the earth, because the moon is blocking the sunlight to the earth. This is called a new moon, where the sun's rays are shining down on the moon and all of that sunlit side is facing away from the earth. But we also have to, in order to figure out how an eclipse occurs, look at the orbit of the moon, because it's real unique and there's something very special about it. It's not a perfect circle. In fact, this is known as an ellipse. An ellipse is an elongated oval. Sometimes it's closer to the earth, and sometimes it's a little bit farther. There's also another unique feature with the orbit. It's actually at about a 5-degree tilt. So what this means is every time we have a new moon, we don't see an eclipse because it's not on the ecliptical plane, and sometimes it lines up perfectly. That's when you have a solar eclipse. Now, with an annular eclipse, there's also an importance to how close the moon is to the earth. Sometimes it's at perigee. This is known as a supermoon. This is where it's at its closest point. But on the other side, you've got what's called apogee. Apogee is its farthest point away from the earth, and this is where it's a little smaller, and it's known as a micromoon. This is where you have an annular eclipse, where the moon isn't quite big enough to cover up the entire sun. So that's how you get the Ring of Fire. And you can clearly see when we look at the top view that the moon's orbit, sometimes it's closer to the earth, sometimes it's farther. So let's get back to our eclipse illustration. We've again got the sun, we've got the moon, we've got the earth. Now this is clearly not to scale. I think you can tell that because the sun is huge. In fact, the sun is 400 times the size of the moon, but at the same time, it's 400 times as far away from the moon. So that's why it appears as the same size in an eclipse. Now, I want to give you an illustration on an eclipse. So you got the sun's rays shining down on the earth, but the moon's blocking it, and you get two types of shadows. You get one shadow that's known as the penumbra. The penumbra is the partial eclipse, and the partial eclipse is where we're going to see in northwest Arkansas in the River Valley, where part of the moon is blocking the sun. In the real special case, and these are spectacular, you get a total solar eclipse when you're in the umbra. And that umbra right here is where all of the sunlight is being blocked. It's a very narrow band that makes it to the earth. But because the moon is a little smaller than a supermoon, when it's bigger and covers up the entire sun, you get what's called the antumbra. The antumbra is going to be moving across the southwestern United States, and that is where you have your annular eclipse. So there's an illustration about the eclipse, but you might be wondering, hey, what does this look like when you're on the earth if you're in that path of annularity? Well, this is what it looks like, the ring of fire, where everything starts getting a little bit dark, but not as dark as a total solar eclipse, because the moon is not close enough to the earth to cover the entire sun. Now, I want to take a look at the path here just to give you an illustration what we're going to see in northwest Arkansas. And so as we take a look at the annular eclipse path around noon, it is going to be moving through Texas and New Mexico. We see about 67, 68% of the moon being blocked just before noon. And so that's going to be our max eclipse. Now, if we look at the entire path of annularity, this is going to be making its way across the western United States, continuing south into Texas, and making its way through Corpus Christi, San Antonio. We'll have an article to let you know all about the best places to view this eclipse. And of course, it all depends on cloud cover too, because if there's clouds, then you clearly won't see the eclipse. Now, this is just an appetizer, just a taste to the total solar eclipse that's going to occur April 8th of 2024. Mark your calendars, because you do not want to miss it, and you want to be in that path of totality. And so that's a little bit more about how an annular eclipse occurs.
Cool.
Yeah, thanks, Dan.
Absolutely amazing segment right there. And of course, Dan also made a wonderful weather blog. Let's show that on Weather One real quick. You can scan that QR code on your screen. Also find us on our website, knwa.com. Of course, more information on that annular eclipse, and we'll continue to keep you posted on the upcoming one next year.
Yeah,